If you've eliminated sugar from your diet and your blood sugar numbers still refuse to budge, it's tempting to assume you're doing something wrong or that willpower is the missing ingredient. In reality, your body may be telling you that sugar was never the core issue in the first place. Two facts tend to surprise people. First, your liver manufactures its own glucose continuously, regardless of whether you've eaten anything sweet. Second, a bowl of plain oatmeal can raise blood sugar just as fast, sometimes faster than a dessert. Neither of these facts fits the standard avoid sugar narrative, which is exactly why so many people plateau despite doing everything they've been told. Type 2 diabetes rarely originates with candy or soda. It develops in the liver, in shrinking muscle tissue, and in the way the body's overall metabolism processes energy. The obsession with sugar has pointed millions of people toward the wrong target. They give up dessert, feel like they've solved the problem, and meanwhile, the actual mechanism keeps progressing quietly. Some people even trade sugar for foods they assume are virtuous. Oat crackers, dried fruit, honey, instant oatmeal, and then can't understand why their lab results haven't improved. From a metabolic standpoint, sweetness is irrelevant. What matters is how quickly a food converts into glucose and whether the liver and muscles can absorb that glucose efficiently when it shows up. Consider a composite case common in primary care. A woman in her late 50s. We'll call her Carol, who hadn't eaten candy or drunk soda in years. Her breakfast routine included oatmeal, a side of bananas or raisins, and a glass of orange juice. At a routine visit, her doctor flagged prediabetes, and Carol was baffled. But looked at metabolically, her healthy breakfast was sending a steady stream of fast-absorbing glucose into a liver that was already struggling to keep up, keeping her insulin levels chronically elevated. Her problem was never a candy bowl. It was hiding inside her healthy-seeming routine. This is where the concept of insulin resistance becomes essential to understand. Insulin is the hormone your pancreas releases to usher glucose out of the bloodstream and into your cells, a completely normal and necessary process. Problems begin when cells stop responding properly to that signal. Picture insulin as a message your cells are supposed to receive. In a well-functioning system, the message arrives, the cells respond, glucose moves inside, and blood sugar settles back to normal. With insulin resistance, the cells become partially unresponsive to that message. The pancreas compensates by pumping out more insulin, and it's that chronically elevated insulin, not sugar itself, that drives fat storage, persistent hunger, post-meal energy crashes, rising blood pressure, and fatty liver buildup. You could clear every trace of candy from your kitchen and still be running high insulin all day long if your regular diet includes bread, white rice, potatoes, pasta, sweetened yogurt, juice, or bananas, since all of these raise blood glucose quickly enough to trigger the same repeated insulin surge. Understanding this shift, from avoid sweet things to understand how fast something becomes glucose and where that glucose can go, is the real starting point for making sense of blood sugar problems that don't respond to cutting out dessert. One mechanism rarely gets explained in plain language. Your liver produces glucose on its own, around the clock, specifically to prevent blood sugar from dropping too low between meals. Under normal conditions, this is a healthy and necessary safeguard. But when the liver becomes overloaded, particularly when fat accumulates inside it, it loses precision. It starts releasing glucose into the bloodstream even when blood sugar levels are already sufficient. This explains a pattern many people find frustrating, waking up with elevated fasting blood sugar despite eating nothing sweet the night before. People tend to blame themselves and respond by restricting food further, which the liver can interpret as a threat, prompting it to release even more glucose. It's a self-defeating loop. You can control every item on your plate and still have a liver working against your numbers simply because the organ itself is overwhelmed. After age 50, one of the strongest forces driving this whole process has nothing to do with food at all: muscle loss. Muscle is the single largest consumer of glucose in the body, more than the brain, the heart, or the liver combined. Starting in your 40s, muscle mass declines every year unless you actively work to preserve it. The number on the bathroom scale may barely move, because fat gradually replaces the muscle that's lost. But fat barely uses any glucose at all, which means the metabolic consequences are real, even when your weight looks stable. Picture someone with roughly 30 kilograms of active muscle mass at age 35. A meal's worth of glucose moves efficiently into that muscle. and blood sugar normalizes within a reasonable window. By age 55, that same person might carry only 23 or 24 kilograms of muscle. They eat the same meal, or even a smaller one, but there are far fewer places for the glucose to go. It lingers in the bloodstream longer, the pancreas works harder to compensate, and cells that are already under strain become even less responsive to insulin. This is a major reason blood sugar tends to worsen with age, even in people who eat carefully. Research on people with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes consistently shows that regular muscle-engaging movement improves insulin sensitivity more than dietary restriction alone, even when weight loss is minimal. The key mechanism: working muscle can absorb glucose directly through a pathway that operates independently of insulin. During and after muscular effort, muscle cells can pull in glucose without waiting for the insulin signal that's become unreliable. Less glucose lingers in the blood, less demand falls on the pancreas, and overall insulin levels drop, which in turn supports better appetite control, less fluid retention, steadier blood pressure, and improved sleep. Walking alone doesn't provide enough resistance to preserve or rebuild muscle tissue. Some form of resistance, body weight, a resistance band, light dumbbells, is needed, though nothing extreme. Consistency matters far more than intensity. A practical target worth discussing with your doctor: 10 to 15 minutes of basic resistance movement daily. Slow, controlled squats to a comfortable depth. Wall push-ups. Chair stands performed without using your hands for support. Band pulls. If you're prone to dizziness, this shouldn't be done on an empty stomach. A light meal followed by 30 to 60 minutes of rest, then a calm, unhurried session works well for many people. The goal isn't exhaustion. It's a warm, engaged feeling in the muscles being worked. Many people notice changes within a week or two: less drowsiness after meals, milder evening cravings, and more consistent morning glucose readings. That's not coincidence. It reflects real biochemical change. There's also a direct connection between muscle activity and liver health that goes largely unrecognized. Regular movement reduces fat accumulation inside the liver, and a less congested liver stops overproducing glucose overnight. That single shift is one of the most direct routes to a lower fasting blood sugar reading, and it has almost nothing to do with what was eaten the evening before. Beyond sugar avoidance, there are several dietary traps that catch even highly disciplined people. The first is fast-digesting carbohydrates that don't taste sweet at all. The body doesn't sort foods by flavor. It responds to how quickly something converts into glucose and how much arrives at once. White bread, instant oatmeal, mashed potatoes, white rice, pasta, rice cakes, and cornflakes all produce a rapid glucose spike. Depending on preparation and what they're paired with, some of these can raise blood sugar even faster than table sugar. Plain, well-cooked oatmeal eaten alone on an empty stomach is a textbook example. The glucose becomes available almost instantly. Insulin spikes, blood sugar then drops, and hunger returns within an hour or two. For people over 50, this pattern is especially hard on the system, since the pancreas is less flexible than it was at 30, and muscle tissue absorbs the glucose wave more slowly. The second trap is frequent snacking. A yogurt here, an apple there, a handful of dried fruit, a cracker with tea. Each one triggers an insulin response. The issue isn't any single snack, it's the pattern of near constant, low-level insulin elevation. The body needs stretches of low insulin to carry out maintenance work. The liver drawing down its glucose stores, fat being used for fuel, and cell sensitivity gradually recovering. When insulin stays elevated almost continuously, which happens when eating occurs every 2 to 3 hours, even in small amounts, those recovery windows disappear entirely. Some research suggests that 2 to 3 structured meals a day, spaced at least 4 hours apart, health conditions permitting, can do more for morning blood sugar than any single change to what's actually eaten. This is worth raising directly with a healthcare provider, particularly for anyone who has been advised to eat small amounts frequently throughout the day, since that guidance carries very different implications depending on someone's underlying metabolic state. The third common trap is fruit, and it catches people off guard because fruit has a health food reputation. Fruit itself isn't the enemy, but the specific sugar it contains. Fructose is processed almost entirely by the liver. If the liver is already carrying excess fat and running overloaded, extra fructose accelerates that fat buildup further. Whole fruit eaten in reasonable portions is generally not a problem. But juice, smoothies, dried fruit, and oversized servings of high-sugar fruits like bananas and grapes bypass the natural pace at which fructose would normally be absorbed. The concentration is too high and it arrives too quickly, so an already stressed liver converts the surplus into stored fat. People who cut out candy entirely but drink juice daily, snack on dried mango, and eat 2 bananas a day are often genuinely confused when their numbers don't improve. The liver doesn't register good intentions, only what it actually receives. The practical takeaway isn't a longer list of forbidden foods. It's a shift toward structure. Protein and fiber slow down glucose absorption. When carbohydrates are eaten alongside a meaningful source of protein and some fat, the resulting glucose rise is slower, flatter, and easier for the body to manage. The same oatmeal that spikes blood sugar when eaten alone behaves very differently, paired with eggs, cottage cheese, or full-fat plain yogurt. The same potato that causes a sharp spike as mashed potatoes produces a much gentler response when served cold or in a firmer form alongside vegetables and protein. This isn't about achieving perfection. It's about consistent structure. Every meal benefits from having a protein anchor. Carbohydrates should come with some kind of buffer, and the day's eating window should include clearly defined pauses rather than constant grazing. From there, sleep enters the picture as one of the most overlooked variables. Sleep isn't passive rest. It's active hormonal regulation, and the decisions your body makes overnight about handling blood sugar the next day are largely determined by how well you slept. When sleep is poor or cut short, cortisol rises. Cortisol is a stress hormone with important short-term functions, but one of its effects is raising blood glucose by signaling the liver to release sugar into circulation. Even in the